Welcome to Sports Court. I'm Tamara Holder. Right now, thousands of young men across the country are training for the NFL draft. Most of these athletes have been injured once or twice. Some have even had concussions. But that has not stopped them from chasing their dream of entering the big leagues. Could that be, though, because the NFL has done such a great job at controlling the reported science, their reported science, about the effects of concussions on its players? According to a bold expose by the New York Times, the NFL's, quote, independent scientific research isn't so independent after all, and in fact, they omitted key information. Joining me via Skype to discuss this report is Dustin Fink, founder of the Concussion Blog. Welcome, Dustin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tamara.
Thanks for being here. So I want to talk to you about the concussion issue in general. It's been a PR nightmare for the NFL, from the class action lawsuit a few years ago, the suicide of Junior Seau, the concussion movie that came out at the end of last year, and now this story. So do you think that this has had any kind of impact on players and parents on their decision whether or not to play this game?
I think casually it has. It's starting to pick up ground in terms of the concussion issue. Long-term effects of concussion is we just don't know a whole lot. We're still learning. So there's a lot of questions and apprehension at this time.
Well, when you say we're still learning, a lot of that has to do with scientific research, right? And the NFL put together this committee. And those reports, I believe there were maybe 13 reports that the NFL committee has put out over time, was used in the class action lawsuit. And since then, of course, the lawsuit settled, but some of the players appealed the settlement based specifically on this research, saying that they wanted a separate investigation. I actually want to pull up this graphic that we made for our viewers based on this New York Times report. Okay, so there were 887 concussions diagnosed by team medical staffs analyzed by this NFL committee. And then there were another 100 diagnosed concussions from 96 to 2001 that were omitted from the NFL studies. So based on this report and those numbers, Dustin, do you think that this investigation will prompt a larger investigation?
I would hope it would. This has been something that's been bantered about and talked about quietly. I wouldn't say quietly, but loudly in circles that are independent of the NFL. For a long time, people have questioned what they've been reporting and even what has been in peer-reviewed science. You could even see some information when it came out from Dr. Cantu regarding whether this is complete information or not. We at the Concussion Blog put together stuff later on 2010 through 2013, 4 seasons, and we found that some differences in terms of what was being reported by the NFL versus what we were finding too. So yeah, hopefully we can get down to
what were those differences? If you can
Sure.
Go into that, it would be interesting to know what differences you found.
So we wrote a paper on it, but early on in 2010 and 2011, we found more concussions via public searches on internet and Twitter and what have you. We found reports of players being concussed but not being on the injury reports later in the week, as put out by the NFL. We also found some interesting things, such as teams not reporting any concussions over the entire season. Most notably, one of the biggest things that we found was preseason concussion reporting really blossomed between 2010 and 2012, somewhere in there, because I think when we first started collecting, I think we found maybe 7 preseason concussions. Those don't have to be reported by the NFL, but that's what we found. But later on, we found through investigations and the journalists were starting to put out more information, we started to see upwards of 70 preseason concussions. So those were like the big markers there that we found. By no means was this Sure.
I think to your point is that there was no reporting, but it was going on, or it was being reported elsewhere in the news and on social media and whatnot. Which brings to what the article pointed out, 2 major players that we all know, Troy Aikman and Steve Young. They had numerous concussions, and they were admitted from the NFL's research. So I would like to know, do you think that the players who know that they've been concussed, Do you think that they should speak out against the NFL? Because it seems like there's this code of silence that the players are not speaking out unless they're part of these the lawsuit. But even then, they're being told to stay quiet.
Right. I think the issue is and the fear from players is speaking out against the NFL. I think we need to change the way we maybe address that and say, speak for science. If players have been concussed and weren't reported, whether they knew or didn't know that they were reported, they need to report that information to somebody, the NFL or whoever's going to end up taking over this.
But that brings up a question. Do the players know that their concussions have or have not been reported? Because it seems that the teams are then reporting it to the committee. The guys go on the field, they go into the locker room, they get their training, whatever, they go home, and it's that cycle. They're not even part of the investigation or the research, correct?
No, they're not. They're basically what happens is they get hurt. The teams put out injury reports for everything else of what's going on, and they report that to the NFL. So they don't know if they're actually being counted. And I don't know if that's a player problem or not, but I mean, it's still a matter of the NFL needs to get the right numbers out there so we can actually identify whether things are helping or not helping.
And I spent some time on your blog. You talk a lot about how you don't think we should wuss down contact sports. So what is the answer then? Because concussions don't happen unless you're involved in a very high-impact sport, correct?
Well, concussions can happen everywhere, but I mean, when we're talking collision sports, the point of collision sports is to create some sort of action or a motion that's going to cause a collision that could cause a concussion. So the best way to handle that, in my opinion, is to reduce exposure. And so practice time needs to be cut back, right? So and the NFL has done that. Colleges are doing that. And high school associations are starting to do that. So that's what we need to that's where it needs to start. But we can't see if these are helping or not because we're not getting the true numbers. Hence the problem that the New York Times pointed out here. We have cherry-picked data that we don't know if things are helping or not helping.
Cherry-picked is a nice word. I would say more like a lie. That sounds a lot better. But cherry-picked is good for today. It's a Friday, and I'll take that as a nice Easter answer. But I appreciate your time, and continue to please do your investigation because it means a lot to all of us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Tamara. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching. Sports Court is adjourned.